I am so thrilled to have you all here today for this really powerful conversation, Lunch with the List, with Lisa Weinert and Jamia Wilson, who are two longtime beloved listers who are powerhouses. And we are here to celebrate Lisa's book, Narrative Healing. Do you have a copy there? Yeah, Narrative Healing. It's about unlocking the power of your story. Lisa has been a book Sherpa to many folks and to many listeners, and she will tell you more about her journey to get to this book as well. And Jamia Wilson is VP and executive editor at Random House. And you all, many of you probably know her and respect her and admire her as I do. I thank you all for spending your lunch time with us for this important conversation. I am going to turn it over to Jamia and to Lisa to lead the conversation. Please put your questions in the chat as we go, and we will make sure that we have time for them. This is going to be a really special experience together. We're going to do some workshopping. We're going to do some talking. We're going to do some writing, I think. So I'm excited to have you all here. And with that, I am going to take myself off spotlight and turn it over to Jamia.
Thank you so much, Anne, and thank you so much, Lisa, and to all of the LIST community who are here today and our friends. I'm so excited to be here talking about narrative healing and also getting integrated today, as you'll see, in the narrative healing practice and experience. That was the visionary framework that Lisa has created. And I have just had so much joy in my life having a friendship with Lisa, as well as being able to collaborate in myriad roles in our lives, from wellness spaces we're in together to the literary world, as well as activist spaces. Lisa was a collaborator and partner with us at the Feminist Press when I was publisher there. And we've also done workshops at Omega together. So it brings me great delight for you to be getting engaged with this experience, whether or not you've already engaged with narrative healing, or this is something new to you. I'm so excited that this book that is a part of the really transformative work that she's done is out in the world so that narrative healing can be accessible to anyone around the globe. So I wanted to just start with a little bit of praise that I shared upon first reading this book before it was out in the world about narrative healing. This groundbreaking program shifts our perspective on healing, and it enables us to progress forward toward a path of complete well-being and show up as our best selves. At a time when our culture is deeply divided and suffering from complex trauma, narrative healing is a program for connection for everybody. So I wanted to share that because I was so excited, but also just really enlivened in my heart about this opportunity for Lisa to share what I think is the antidote that so many of us need to having experienced a collective trauma together, the biggest worst group project of all time, as I like to say, but also because I just have such deep respect for Lisa as a literary visionary and also a healer. So Lisa has taught and lectured on the power of storytelling at many esteemed institutions, including Kripalu, Omega, Wesleyan University, and many Fortune 500 companies. She started her career in book publishing. She worked at Penguin Random House, at Knopf, the very storied imprint, creme de la creme within our ranks. And she eventually became a certified yoga instructor and specializes in trauma-informed and restorative yoga and healing specifically, which makes her the absolute perfect person to bring narrative healing into being. And it's a writing program that really seeks to release our stories in ways that are accessible, inclusive, and empowering. And instead of putting pen to paper immediately, like most writing programs that one can experience, narrative healing, Awaken the Power of Your Story, really begins with the body and provides anyone in any body not just people who see themselves as writers, a comforting and inclusive pathway to heal by searching within yourself first. So I'm really proud to be here with Lisa. Thank you so much for giving me some time to just share why I'm so excited to have this conversation. And I want to invite Lisa to lead us in a brief exercise to get us immersed in narrative healing immediately.
Hi guys, Lisa Weinert here. Jamia, thank you so much. And Anne, thank you so much for that warm welcome. It's really, it's such a pleasure and a sense of like deep joy and grounding to be here with you. You have been a huge advocate for this work since before it even really began. And one of the main lessons in narrative healing, and also that I learned from putting together narrative healing, is that putting a book together and releasing stories in the world in order to truly have impact and experience the healing that they possess, you must surround yourself with people who see you, hold you, make you feel like the best version of yourself. And you're definitely that person for me. So thank you for being here today. I want to welcome everyone and take just a minute or two to connect with our bodies as we come into this space. And it's so good to see some familiar faces and some new folks. So wherever you are, if you like, or perhaps just listen or ignore this completely, I know we're in all really different environments. Find yourself a comfortable seat or standing, but find a place where you can begin to connect with your breath. And all I really mean by that in this context is feeling your feet on the ground, your seat on your seat. An acknowledgement that right now in this time you have a body and you're breathing in your body. And take 3 rounds of breath with that intention, noticing what your breath is like right now. Shallow, strong, light, heavy. You fill in your own words. And let the jaw relax and the eyelids heavy. Let the shoulders relax. And you can stay exactly as you are, watching the breath move in and out. And if you'd like to move, I'm going to give you a, we'll stay seated, but move with a practice with the breath. I'm going to give a brief practice. And if you like, you can imagine that your breath is kind of like a swing, sort of inhaling and coming to an end of the inhale and exhaling. And like a swing, there's sort of a bit of a pause between the different directions. So we're going to inhale for a count of 6 and then hover there, and then exhaling for a count of 8. So moving with a longer exhalation. And I'll move you through it with my own count a couple of times, and then you'll be on your own. So starting now, inhaling 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and hold. And X, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Once more. In 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and hold. And X, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Now do that 2 more times on your own. You might want to go faster or slower. And when I say hold the breath, I really mean like that hover and a swing, not like a firm hold. And then as you're ready, let go of that effort, return to a natural breath. And if your eyes were closed, you can open them and take a moment to look around your environment, just noticing maybe where the windows are, where the door is, where the ceiling meets the walls, or if you're outside, any of the perimeters. So welcome back. So I'm going to jump right in and offer a little section from the introduction of narrative healing. And then we're going to have some discussion amongst the two of us. And to give you a little heads up, if you have a writing technology nearby, could be obviously or maybe on a computer or phone, but pen or paper, we're going to give some opportunities for practice together now to really have an experience. And so now might be a time to grab those things. So this is from the introduction of narrative healing. We share our stories for one reason. We have to. In my earliest memory of writing, I am nestled under my covers in a kind of bedsheet cocoon. I am 7 and I am spilling my guts out. I am sending an SOS into the universe. I fill my journal with urgent, exasperated cries like, help me. Can you believe it? And don't tell anyone, but I am a sensitive and intense kid growing up in New York City with a pile of siblings, high pressure parents, and great big feelings that I can't always understand or express. I often feel like I'm wearing my skin inside out. When I'm writing, I feel heard and seen. My journal is a portal to something larger than myself contained within me, and I am hooked. Storytelling is the backdrop of my childhood. My mom is an author, and I grew up surrounded by people who earned their living writing books. I learned the ins and outs of literary life, learning to eat my greens and make my bed. I'm also from a lineage of women who fought for the right to tell their stories. My Welsh maternal great-grandmother was illiterate and signed her name with an X. 2 generations later, 2 of her granddaughters went on to publish books. My Jewish paternal grandmother taught reading in a time when it was radical for white women to work. At every opportunity, she wagged her index finger at me and said, you must read. They can never take education away. I was taught words matter and that telling my story is a birthright I am bound to preserve and protect. Writing becomes a daily habit when I'm 12, and my family moves for the 3rd time in 3 years. Fifi, my half-sister's mother, hands me a black notebook and commands me to write when I'm lonely or upset, or happy and excited, or just have something to say. She says, you can write whatever you want. You can tell made-up stories or write about what you see or what you feel. She emphasizes this journal is just for me, and I don't need to share it with anyone else, but I can share it with her if I want to. I am mesmerized. Fifi is an artist and says, all great books have a great cover. We spend the afternoon smearing the journal with a thick coating of oil pastels shaping Lisa in big letters and bold colors with a rainbow underneath. I feel like I have made my mark. I start writing daily, reflecting on daily events of the day and describing my feelings. I write terrible poetry, anonymous love letters, and ambitious short stories. Something about having a reader propels me, and tracking my emotional reality in words makes me feel like I am in charge of my experience. Writing offers an escape from the challenging and at times scary world around me. I write alone when I think no one is looking. It becomes something like an illicit habit. My journal is my first love, my confidant, my constant companion, and my obsession. Writing takes the edge off. I'm skipping. My first writing gig is in journalism. I'm the editor of my high school and college newspaper and literary journals. I obsess over every headline, every story. I pull all-nighters, skip meals, and drink a lot to hold the scenes together. I wear my writing on my exterior like an identity marker. There's an urgent sense that there's a right way and a wrong way to write. So I wrap myself up in ambition to get by. In college, I experienced a mental health crisis and writing becomes slippery and unreliable. I skimp into a severe depression following a few events that overwhelm my system. I feel hopeless and my body disobeys me. I become clumsy. Skipping. When I try to write, my words separate me instead of soothe me. I create grooves, writing in circles about painful feelings and experiences that lead me further inward and isolate me from the world. I write over and over, what is wrong with me? I think I have done something wrong. And my pen is not strong enough to pull me out by itself. The president of the college ignores my pleas to drop out and instead puts me on an enforced medical leave. I am sent home to 51 unopened boxes, an empty apartment, and no place to go. I am treated like nothing happened and told not to tell anyone. The hardest part isn't what happened. The hardest part is the residue. My feelings are like tidal waves, and I reach for my pen and paper. I write furious and frantic letters and stories. People who are taking care of me confiscate my writing, saying it's overstimulating. And every day I try again. With every word on the page, I find myself, then lose myself, and then locate myself again. I survive by wrapping this experience up neatly in a box and burying it. I move, switch schools, straighten my hair, and pretend like it never happened. When I meet people, I edit and parcel out bits of my story. When I graduate, I massage the little interruption in my resume and doggedly pursue a career in publishing. I work at a major publishing house as a publicist and devote myself to other people's stories for the next decade. I spend my days trying to fix and manipulate every message to secure the right outcome, the right review, or the right story. I start to treat writing more like a weapon or a shield, something I can use to control outcomes. I write pitch letters and emails instead of from the heart. I go to award events and literary parties, and I decide that if my writing isn't going to win a national book award, it isn't worth writing at all. The more I live in my head, the less I write and the further away I get from my body. I try to squeeze myself into a new story. I focus on pursuing more socially acceptable roles and try to win people over. I get engaged, move to a high-rise apartment, I wear pencil skirts and heels. I feel like I'm wearing a costume that's 2 sizes too small. I pour alcohol and work over everything and anything to smooth out the rough edges. I go to work, I go out, I go home, I rotate my plans with different acquaintances so I'm not known or accountable to anyone. Life gets harder to manage, and I find myself in precarious situations. I'm going to skip. I think drinking and writing go hand in hand. I think drinking is a lubrication I need to feel inspired. In reality, I'm not writing a single sentence. Instead, I'm talking about writing while I drink with strangers. I feel indifferent to my life. It's a different feeling than the suicidal feelings or dramatic adventures of the past. Now I feel nothing, like everything is gray. I have a pervasive feeling that nothing matters. It looks like things can only get worse, but then my body wakes me up. In my 30s, I suffer another acute medical crisis, this time not a mental health crisis, but a cancer scare. As I recover, I experience a shift. I learn to listen to my body in a new way. I get sober and begin a journey of recovery. I learn how to let others see me and hear me, and I do the same for them. I start to have a new experience with writing. I write gratitude lists instead of self-punishing ones. Instead of being silenced, I'm encouraged to track and share every emotion and every experience with a safe community who understands, relates, and is available to support me. I meet a kind friend who offers a relaxed ear. When I tell them my wild stories and how good I am at dodging bullets, they cock their head and say, maybe one day you won't have to dodge so many bullets. I'm dumbfounded imagining this as a possibility. I'm going to just end with this. Instead of leaping through books I think I should read, I rediscover a joy of reading. I put down morbid thinking and pursue thousands of hours of yoga and mindfulness trainings to learn how to reconnect with my body and understanding the stories my body holds. I find a connection to a higher loving force around me. I start inviting my body to the page, pausing, and listening to what is meant to be said rather than barking at the page and ordering it around. In doing so, I start practicing writing with my whole body and listening with my whole self with an aim to connect. I feel whole and find my voice. I'll just read this. What transpires over the next 10 years amazes me. Almost immediately after getting sober, I'm invited back as a keynote speaker to the same college I was forced to leave. Soon after, I'm invited back as a visiting writer to teach in the very same program that rejected me as an undergrad. That same year, I was invited to create the first narrative healing program. As a result of befriending my story and releasing my shame to trusted communities, I'm given the opportunity to teach people just like me and people nothing like me. In doing so, the parts of me that I'd banished and shamed are returned to me. I develop a new default setting of trust and friendliness in place of distrust and contempt. And so it moves on to really tell the origins of the narrative healing program, but that's really where this program came from. Thanks, guys. You're me. Oh, there you go.
Thank you so much for reading. It was so beautiful to hear it in your voice as well. And wanted to ask you to talk a bit about the lens that you used. You talked about how you came into your body and to narrative healing as the lens to help connect with the reader. And I wanted to ask you about what did it mean for you in terms of your narrative healing process to share yourself with readers and also sharing this framework?
Do you mean in terms of publishing the book?
Exactly.
Well, we're just a week in, so I don't know. But the main, I wanted to really start there as well, because what really happened to me is I walked into this world, this experience where I was experiencing different types of trauma and acknowledging different traumas that I was holding from the past that were right in front of me, and experiencing the limitations of the storytelling skills I knew from my years in publishing, and that they actually didn't help at all, because when my body is in fight, flight, or freeze mode, I have no access to my real voice. So I spent years studying mindfulness practices and I started learning about oh, the body holds stories. My voice is in my body, and this is not a metaphor. This is like a real thing. And it became really clear to me as I was offering this program in different settings, working with different kinds of groups dealing with trauma or illness or creative blocks or whatever it was, that I really wanted to be able to talk to people who weren't in the same room as me. And I think that's really, and and this was a book that wasn't out there when I needed it. So I felt really called to put it down, basically.
And what I love about the book too is that, it's thoughtful, but it's also active. And I love books like that. And I wanted to ask you about your thinking around how you framed the storytelling to invite people. I see this book as an invitation to invite people in to this process, but into their bodies, or also into thinking of themselves as writers, even if that's not the core identity that they have. And would love it if we could explore that for a bit.
Yeah, that's such a great question. And I think all the time, and I tell a story in the book about being in a writing workshop. It was like a writing workshop. You had to apply to be in, and then you were in it. And the teacher, who was Danny Shapiro, looked out and asked us to raise our hands if we were writers. And nobody raised their hand, absolutely nobody raised their hand. And that's been my experience in the workshops I teach as well. And we carry so much, and I've seen nods. There's something happens to us when we hear the word writer that we're like, I'm probably not that. I even work with many writers who have many published books that will say things like, I'm not a real writer. And, there's a lot to that. And I think that's sort of interesting. But from my perspective, I really came to this work because I was in a tremendous amount of pain, and nothing I was doing was working. And for me, yoga and writing have been daily medicine for me now for 25 years. And they really weren't working anymore because I was not connected to my body, and I was escaping in all kinds of ways. And what I started to understand better, because I had really good teachers that taught me through restorative yoga practices and trauma informed practices, and qigong practices especially, was if I started to move in gentle ways and breathe, different emotions would pop up that eventually I might have words for. And I think of those, and I talk about it a lot in the book, that these are sort of stories, they're hidden colonies of stories that we're carrying all the time that we're not aware of. And they really only speak to us through movement and breath awareness. They're not going to speak to us by like forcing it onto the page. And I also had myself, I won't speak for others, but I definitely had the experience many times of being in writing circles and wanting so badly to tell my story. Like I really had a story to tell, but being in a circle that was very like, you know, sort of hunched over caffeinated and like pounding criticisms at each other. And I started to learn that the body really needs to be open and relaxed in order to receive any information with ease and with trust. So it was really important to me that this program, because it was my experience, really began with the body, so that when we were telling our stories, we were inviting our whole selves to the page, not just like the dominant, powerful stories that we were shrieking that probably weren't even ours anyway. I mean, we pick up all the dominant narratives of the culture around us and sort of ancestral stuff. Like it takes a while to know really what's the story that really needs to be told now.
Thank you so much for guiding us through that too, because I feel like there's a universal in there that's so connecting for all of our experiences, but also each of us will have a different individual journey as it relates to what narrative healing means, which is what has been really beautiful to witness in your workshops and what will happen as more people engage with this book and do the exercises on the page. So I wanted to ask you another question, which is just about when you did sit down to write this book, what did you do for your body in that process? Because you are someone who has that awareness and you have that knowledge. And as an editor and also a writer, I've been thinking about this. Some of the experiences I've had or that I see my authors go through, and the very, very heart-driven, soulful, sometimes excruciating process of birthing a book out into the world, that there isn't a lot out there, which is why I'm excited about this book. And there's not a lot of discussion or normalization of discussion of what happens to you in an integrative way when you have to be in this endeavor of facing the blank page, metaphorically and literally, and be a body that's doing it. And I wondered, because you have this knowledge and you've also helped coach other people through this, how did you shape your narrative healing process while writing a book within the structures of an industry? And because we've both been in it, that is structured in a way where it's about the head and not connecting it with the rest of the body. So I'm just really curious about what you can share, because I see many writers on this call, and I think it could be helpful for all of us to learn about how we can approach whatever we're writing now or our next project in an embodied way.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for asking that question. I think it's really helpful. You know, the number one intention of this work is that my biggest hope is that it's really welcoming and inviting, and that there are many options, so that if one thing doesn't work for you, or just kind of like, I really didn't like that, there's like many others to choose from. And the other thing is like the part of I view writing as a practice in the same way that like it can be a mindfulness practice. Like yoga is a mindfulness practice, meditation is a mindfulness practice, but so can like Olympic weightlifting or qigong or biking or swimming or cooking. So I really think there's as many ways to find your way here as there are humans on the planet, and there's no one way to do it. And it should be something that feels really accessible to you, and that feels good to a certain extent. Like it doesn't always feel good, but that it offers some kind of relief that you can rely on. I think that's the basic way. For me, yoga and writing and meditation has been a really, really rich path. And it's really the same rules apply every day, whether I'm writing or not. And I think like what it takes for me to be able to write is the same things that it takes for me to not like totally snap at my partner when they annoy me, or to like pick up the phone when I don't want to pick up the phone, or like to go about, I have the way I think about it personally. I often reflect on a moment. I was hearing one of my teachers talk about how when you see like a happy person walking down the street, somebody who's just sort of like, yes, like giving off great energy. I know a lot of people in this room are that person. You should look at that person like they're like an Olympic athlete, like the amount of work that goes into really fully realizing yourself so that you're giving off that kind of energy to the people around you. And so then the walking on the street part is just a very small part of your day. There's a lot of other things you did that day, or maybe in your life's journey to bring you to that point. And I look more at like the lifestyle of the writer and the writing life. So it's really individual. And I don't think it's the same thing applies. I really like to give options. I don't think everybody needs a perfect writing studio. A lot of people I work with write in their like bathrooms or car. We do what works, right? And I think it's really important to move into a more inclusive way of viewing creative life and creative paths. But for me, it's really important I have some kind of movement and meditation, and that like I'm not like hungry or like thirsty, that I'm basically feeling comfortable in my skin and I can have an uninterrupted time in front of me to the best of my ability. So like turning off my phone, not checking email, that kind of thing. And also to have like treat my writing like a practice, so that there's like a beginning and an end to it. Otherwise, it kind of leaks into the whole day and the whole week. And I feel very guilty that I'm not like constantly writing, and nobody is constantly writing. But I primarily wrote this book during lockdown of the pandemic, when I was just married and my husband was undergoing some pretty serious health things at the time. And there were sirens like all around. So I really needed my, and I had a really firm deadline, and I just took what I could do. And I leaned in on my meditation practice and my yoga practice. And then there would be like a window where I could be kind of productive, and then it would maybe come and maybe not. And I also want to say that I heard this of Dion Ford, who's a writer right now, who I really admire, and I totally recommend running out and getting her book. Go back and get it. But she was talking, and she was saying, writing is can be really healing, but like writing a book is not healing. And I'll put that out there, that the kind of writing I'm talking about is a writing geared towards self-discovery, self-reflection, creative experience, spiritual connection, awareness, increasing, connecting with others, and maybe and often other work that you want to share with others results from that. But it's a different kind of thing.
Thank you so much. Yes. And I think, thank you for exploring that, because it's something that getting closer to you and the book and the experience of seeing people go through the workshop has helped me read cues within my authors, but also within myself when I'm writing, or to have those conversations with my authors sometimes when I'll say, oh, it seems like you might need some time.
Yeah.
Now just to be, or to reflect, and maybe we should adjust your schedule or something like that. And so I want to just thank you for this, because I think there's so many different layers around what unlocking this means and connecting us to our humanness, because it also just helps create better stories.
Yeah, I mean, I think what I'll say is that I walked into this work thinking, I do want to move into all of my powerful stories and skills lived between like my head and my chin. And it was like, all right here. I thought like storytelling was mind work and writing was mind work. And I really thought my body just existed to like take me places and kind of tolerate. And it was through like illness and pain, and then a tremendous amount of like studying with people who know a lot more than I do, that I started to be able to reframe and realize like my body is actually a source of like creative information. And like everything I need to know is actually literally within. I just don't usually have access to it. And none of us do, because we're usually caught up in some kind of trauma response or nervous system response to our hectic lives, or like the honking horn or the email. It doesn't have to be a big trauma, but we're reacting. And our stories, exist to keep us safe. This is sort of another element of the work, that I view stories and writing as really an extension of the nervous system, because it's the most convenient way to tell our stories. But we're actually telling our stories all the time with each other by how we're moving and breathing and looking and smiling, and through like so I think that this work, in terms of the power of it, it's certainly true that the writers I work with, those that have the intention to publish or something like this, I would like for authors published in the last month, the success rate is pretty high because you're working with a full, like you got all your arsenal, you got all your tools. You're not just sort of like trying to squeak out everything you can from this small space, but also you feel better, and you're more able to help others, read other people's cues, and we can sort of source the world as inspiration. One of the things, I also want to mention that Jamia's voice is heavily featured or prominently featured in the book that you talk about is moving away from kind of a stiff, I'll let you talk about it, but I think it's really important that, it doesn't look this one way. A lot of people I work with like hate yoga and they do weightlifting or whatever, but it's just, how does the body want to move? I work with people who are, terminally ill and can't move. And we really work more with like breath, like everybody that we're kind of here with are alive and can access the stories in their body somehow.
Thank you so much. And it's so powerful because what I think is also being offered by this book and in the practice of narrative healing is it's a lifelong experience you can have, but also not an experience that is sort of measured on the way that we've often been taught. Like you talked about that, oh, you can master it, right? Or that you can best it, right? Or anything like that, that this is an ongoing experience of getting curious about where you are right now in the body as it relates to the work. And you can always move up, as I like to say it, that there's always a place to grow. And I think that is really beautiful because it takes us back to the core of our humanity, but also, as you said, is just really helpful in bringing forth those stories and really honoring them as they deserve to be honored. So in the effort of that, and just sort of talking about honoring the stories of all the amazing people on this call, I was wondering if we could explore one of my favorite exercises in the book, design a moat right now, and we can do some narrative healing together. So I'm going to read an excerpt from the book, and then we're going to go through that exercise, and then we're going to write. And also, just because I'm just the spiritual sort, I also chose this one because it's on page 111. Which felt like a highly auspicious page to pick, because I don't know if there are other people who constantly see 1111s, but I also feel that although this book is accessible to all people, it also feels very soulful to me. And I thought that would be a fun one to start with, but all of the exercises are great. And that was why this one sort of called to me. And I invite you all to do that too. When you can read this book all the way through, but then after you read it all the way through, if there's something you need in it, or you're feeling like, oh, I'm stuck, or I need something, do something like ask yourself, oh, what number is calling out to me? So I always will open up a book to 1111 or 111. And so this is the one I want to share because that was what was calling to me. So design a moat. And just have your writing utensil or, your notepad or however you like to express ready. There's an energy within you that is healing, limitless, abundant, and is just for you. Too often we dole out our precious energy to other people and petty distractions. We all know what happens right after we dream up the perfect space. Something happens to distract us. Maybe you need to make a dentist appointment, or your partner is sick, or your kid, boss, friend, or neighbor needs something, everything from you. The list can be endless. In her famous essay, Power in Time, Mary Oliver writes, the greatest foe may not be the imperfect writing space or lack of inspiration. Our biggest foe as creative beings is our distracted mind. In pursuit of giving to others, we rob ourselves of our own creative energy. There are many ways to protect your energy. The idea here isn't to separate you from everyone else. We're not building a wall. Instead, imagine we are building a moat. Moats are typically bodies of water surrounding a castle to provide protection and defense. The moat keeps some things out, but it also has bridges for others, even ideas, to enter the walls safely. You and your writing practice are the castle. Now design a moat. Make it yours. Throw rose petals in it or anything else that brings you joy. So Lisa's invitation to you now is to describe your moat. And how long should we write? About 5 minutes, Lisa, does that feel good? Or do you have 5 minutes to do that? So yes, write and describe your moat right now and the way that comes up for you first.
And we're going to give you guys about 1 more minute.
Thank you all so much for being on the journey with us with designing the moat. I love it so much because it has really helped shift a framework for me in a way that's feeling very important right now. So thank you so much for that. And we also have, so as you have that, you know, I also invite you to keep it and return to it maybe a week from now and see how you feel, because I know that doing that exercise for me brought up a lot, and having some space from it helped me see, oh, these are the things that I'm already doing well, like gratitude, and these are the places I still need to go when it comes to alignment in my writing practice, but just in life. And so Lisa is going to read another beautiful excerpt to you, and then we're going to do some Q&A. So
Yeah. Thank you,
Lisa,
Jamia. I really love that one too. I can be a very visual person, and practices that allow me to imagine space around me. And I live in a small apartment, so if I can imagine space around me, it can really help me. So I'm going to read this as sort of a closing. This one, I guess, is on page 32, is called "The Earth Has Your Back." We are all connected and supported by the great big safety net holding us all, the Earth. It's hard to feel connected when you're living with trauma. Traumatic experiences can lead you to isolate from social situations and feel lonely and also separate from your whole story. It's hard to remember you're not alone. One way to connect with this feeling of support is to find the Earth. Even when you might feel alone, one way of reminding yourself that you're not is to lean into the ground. It's always there. Try seeking this existing support as you move through your day. You can feel the support of the earth from all the structures around you, including walls, desks, keyboards, and other surfaces. This is the practice. Try it. Find the earth quality within reach. If you don't happen to be outside right now, try leaning against the back of your chair or against a wall or a car seat. You can find relief and support in whatever solid object is near you. You can also feel the ground by using your imagination. Bring to mind the mud of the earth, the dry desert, the grass, the plants, anything that arises. The earth is always supporting you.
beautiful. I love that so much. Yes, and it's so beautiful too. It reminds me of this amazing teacher friend, Raw Goddess. And I remember once we were sitting in a restaurant, and just made me think about how beautiful this practice is. And I was stressing about something in some deadline. And she said, I need you to get on the ground right now. And I said, you mean in this restaurant here in Harlem right now, you want me to, in this outfit, lay in the ground? And she said, yes, vertebrae by vertebrae, lay down and release it all into the ground. So when you shared that beautiful excerpt, it always makes me think of that experience, but also sort of that experience of what it meant to kind of conquer that fear, to access that powerful healing. So I wanted to share it to say the earth truly has your back, and it can always be accessed, even in Harlem at a restaurant. in a silky dress if you need to. So thank you so much for this beautiful gift and for everyone who's with us. And we would love to take some Q&A for Lisa. And I just hope that you all will buy this book, not just for yourselves, but for people who you love. This is going to be a revisited book, and it's going to, I know, just be evergreen and accessible and timely for all the readers who get it either now or later. Oh, so there's a question from Paulette. How can we incorporate these practices into our meditations or meditations we lead for others? I lead a 10-minute meditation before writing sessions. Beautiful. Thank you, Paulette.
Thanks, Paulette. I don't know if you want to expand on that. I really think it's whatever pleases you. If you're already meditating and writing and that's working, great. I don't think there's any reason, there's no like graduate level I think of this stuff, but maybe it will, like some of the practices will offer different contemplations or types of meditation or generative creative prompts that will enliven your existing practice or give a structure to share with the group. Do you want to say more about the groups you lead?
I love that. So it's called A Very Important Meeting, and it's to get it on the calendar. And it's been a real joy to kind of expose writers to the meditation practice and how that can calm and center. And so definitely going to get the book. I'm thinking about maybe doing like, we do like a week of the best practices or things like that. Or is there, you know, there's different kinds of meditations. And I know some writers, you know, were dealing with really painful topics. Like I'm writing a memoir right now and my agent was waiting for my proposal and I went to work on it. I was like, oh yeah, no wonder I'm procrastinating on this. Like this feels awful. I don't want to talk about this stuff, right? Yeah. So are there particular kinds of meditations that can be helpful for when we're telling a painful story?
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for asking that. I do have people I'm working with that are using this just like a daily reading with their meditation practice. So they kind of open up to one and meditate and then do that random prompt. And that could be one way of working with it, almost like a cards or something like that. I definitely have a whole section. I'd be very excited to talk to you also at length about this, about writing and trauma and writing about not just trauma, but challenging emotions. And it's a strong principle of mine that if it feels terrible when you're writing, to step away, in the same way that if you're in a yoga practice and doing a really challenging pose and it's like hurting, it's a good idea to not. I think your body's telling you something important. And I often in those cases like move away from writing and more towards like gentle practices to help the body feel like safer and hang out with that a little bit more until it's feeling more regulated. You know, James Pemabaker, who's done a lot of work on the healing, the science behind how writing heals, he has something called the like the ick factor, meaning like if people he's working with feel like ick when they're writing, don't do it. It's like not beneficial, no good, stop. So that's a little bit how I feel. I'm not sure everyone, not everyone feels that way. It's really personal. But I have particular practices for writing about trauma. One of my favorite ones is called Writing Around the Wound. And that has to do with jumping. So let's pretend this incident happened in time and place. Not all of them do, but just for today, to write from like 6 months later or 6 months prior, when you might have more access to a regulated system. Because if there's a question or a trauma or an experience that you're really like chewing on and wanting to write about, in my experience, anything you write is going to reveal something about that. You don't have to go like straight into the wound itself. I have, for myself, that's been damaging. And so when I work with people, I encourage to like move away from that, but keep writing basically.
I appreciated how you kind of like, there were some ways in which you gave like a euphemism for what happened or just kind of glossed over it, where like, sometimes I feel like I have to dig into the details, but it's like, it was just a good reminder that you're allowed to like guard your own experiences and you're allowed to choose what level you put on the page.
It caused me a lot of harm doing that. And it's a big principle in all the writing programs I offer at Narrative Healing that if it feels that way, don't do it. And I really, I think, as a writer, we're also bodies when we're writing. And you would, if you were running and had a like major knee pain, you would probably not run a marathon right then. You might like go do some strengthening. And I really view it similarly. Like your body's telling you something smart and wise.
Yeah, thank you.
I love
and we feel, and I totally relate. I think we all want to go directly in and just like And it's hard, but it's a common thing that I work with people for sure.
Mhm.
I loved what you were saying when you're both sort of tying in that idea of what it means to also, be able to discern and decide with clarity what boundaries you're holding around how you're talking about the story, because I do think that's about also listening to your body and your soul and your spirit around, what am I ready to reveal right now, or what do I think needs to be revealed? I think that's actually very empowered. And I will say also that I think when it comes to women in writing, and specifically in memoir, that sometimes there's this feeling that people feel that you have to just reveal everything, that you have to reveal every single thing, right? And one of my mentors in publishing had said to me to read some examples of memoir where people wrote about a specific time and place in a tight moment of time that wasn't, and it didn't make it the definitive tome on the experience of this individual, their identity, their moral conduct, or their ethics, but that you're reading the memoir as a slice of time, and showing me through the lens of one author. In this case, it was Patti Smith. This is her editor. The lens of these very discerned moments in time, and how the practice of that was really beautiful about also setting and plot and giving you a really strong sense of time and place. And I've learned a lot from that, because a lot of people, including my deceased mom, who I loved very much, she had said that she was a great writer and she wanted to write a memoir, but she kept saying, oh, I can't write it until all these things happen. I can't write it until these people die, until these stories play out. And I wish she had written some of those things before, and not sort of had that idea that you had to address it all then, or all at once, or after you process something completely. So I did want to just share that I think this is a really powerful teaching that you both gave together in that dialogue, because I see it come up with authors who submit to me sometimes, where I'll say, oh, you have so many stories to tell, and this one book doesn't have to tell them all. That's okay to keep processing and experiencing yourself, your body, for these other stories that could be other books later on.
Yeah.
Wonderful. So I just want to thank you all so much for joining us today, and thank Lisa for writing this important book, this healing book, this narrative healing. And I wanted to just give Lisa the last word and ask if there's anything you would like to leave us with, in addition to, buy this book, share it widely. Is there anything else you'd like to leave us with as we go off into the week and to take narrative healing into our lives?
Yeah, thank you guys. I'm really, I could just talk about this stuff for hours. I think the main thing I want to say I would, be very, very grateful for any support from anyone. I'm actively looking for opportunities to bring this book into the world, into the media space, for events, or talks, or service. I'm doing an event with Susan McPherson on September 13th or 14th with Mom Demand Action and Everytown. I'm really looking to use this book to drive awareness around how storytelling can help heal from trauma, drive connection and action and community. And the best, most authentic way to do that is to partner with people who are doing the work. So if there's any way I can be of support to you, or this book can be of support to you, I really want to do that. I'm putting my email and phone number in the chat. Like I said, my primary purpose here is really to make this book as welcoming, inclusive, and helpful as possible. So I really want to be a resource if other people are working on memoirs or working with groups that they want to provide more. I work with groups ranging from like cancer survivors, people living with terminal illness, but also with like corporate 500 companies, museums, institutions. What I've really found is that the program is has a life of its own, and it really works. And it's most exciting when I can really personalize it and make it really impactful for the people in the room. But if you have any questions about your writing or your writing practice, or how it might benefit you more, I got into this because it made me feel better and nothing else was working. And we're living at a time where wherever you are in your life, there's tremendous like division and complex and simple trauma absolutely everywhere. And if this simple practice of learning how to write in a way from like a regulated body might have massive positive impacts on your health and well-being and how you show up in the world around you, I really want to help show you how to do that, because it takes consistent effort, but I really think it's pretty fun, and it's definitely a light lift. So that's my pitch to you guys, but I really appreciate you taking the time, and Jamia and Anne for helping welcome this book into the world. It means so much to me.
Thank you so much, Lisa, for writing this book, for sharing with so much generosity today. Thank you, Jamia, for leading the conversation with so much empathy and insight and gravitas and depth. I mean, this hour was so powerful and meaningful, and I appreciate all of you, and I appreciate everybody who joined us. We will circulate the recording, and please, I always give everybody a list of to-dos, your to-do list. Buy the book, share on social, and give a review. The reviews on Amazon and Goodreads really matter. So please do those 3 things for Lisa today. And thank you all so much, and we'll see you all again soon.